There's a lot of moving pieces in this episode right now. I'm trying to record with my mic, I'm trying to record with my camera, and I'm also got my notes here in front of me. You will see me on my computer, so that's what's going on here. If I look down, that's why. But hello, welcome to Trying Times. My name's Carmen. If you're new here, I'm so excited to have you here. I hope you're having a wonderful day, night, whenever you may be listening to this. Basically, if you're new, we're friends. If you're coming back, we've been friends. So, welcome back. I'm so excited to have you. This is episode 2 for 2025. And in this episode, we're going to be talking a lot about love, but more so perception of it, more so the connotations of this month that we're in right now, February, and love. Valentine's Day just passed, so I figured what better subject to talk about. I'm even wearing a little bit of red. That wasn't planned. I just wanted to wear my Rosalia sweater. So we're gonna get into it. I feel like we go from this whole time span in December to go through Christmas. We have New Year's, and it's just like so much going on, a culmination of so many celebrations. If you celebrate, or if you celebrate the holidays in any capacity, there's just a lot going on, and I feel like we often spend a lot of that time maybe relaxing, maybe making plans, maybe out and about. I don't really know. We all spend it in different kind of ways, but it is a little bit, I feel, of a more chaotic point of the year, for sure. Even if you're not celebrating. I think we can all agree that it is a little bit more chaotic than any of the other months before it, especially because it's colder. I don't know about you. I don't really like to go outside in that time. So I feel like the most that I do is usually around Christmas time. And I will say that I feel like we go from doing all this stuff to January starting, and then it's kind of just like this feeling of nothing. I think I said this in the last episode where it's kind of like a little bit of a void and it's a little bit depressy. And then we head into February, and February has Valentine's Day. So then we get hit with that. You make with it what you will, you celebrate it in whatever capacity. I think it's interesting because we kind of give it this connotation within the month, but more so in the sense of commodification. I think something like Valentine's Day is incredibly widespread. I feel like with that idea of commodification, that's what sort of brings Valentine's Day up a little bit more, at least in what we see. I think that there's, similar to Christmas, a sort of frenzy, if you will, or a madness that ensues when it comes to shopping and gift giving and all that kind of stuff. And I think part of it is exciting, and part of it is kind of really just a lot of pressures that we might feel as a society to do things a certain way. I noticed that at this time, material importance really comes to the forefront. And it is a little bit frustrating because I think a holiday where you're meant to celebrate your love or appreciation, whether it be for one person or a friend, a group of friends, for yourself. Firstly, I think that's something that should just come all year round. Yes, I'm going to sound like one of those annoying people where it's like it shouldn't just be celebrated one day a year. And I don't think that. I think it should be celebrated often, not in the sense of gifts, but just celebrated as a whole. And I think it's something that really gets emphasized throughout this month. I'm not going to act like I'm not guilty of participating in this because I am as much as anyone else is. I love gift giving to those close to me and those around me when I can, whenever possible. If there's a holiday of sorts that encourages it, then all the better. So I definitely give into this. Also, any sort of baked goods or coffee shops, they love to release like a limited menu, if you will, of things that they have throughout the month of February. And I think that that's wonderful. So I give into that very easily. So I'm no better than anybody here. I wanted to start it by saying that. I do think that it's interesting, though, that we as a society pay so much attention to this and that we have the tendency to give in and participate more than we may even realize. Because it's just, again, one of those things that we're kind of meant to do. So we do it. That's my spiel. Now I'll get into my interesting fact or statistic or what have you. And this one is one that I'm really excited to share. I read this book a while ago by sexologist Shannon Boodram, and it's called The Game of Desire. In this, she basically takes 6 women along on a dating journey and notes things like their mannerisms, their body language, their overall goals when it comes to their personal life, as well as dating, and how they can move towards accomplishing all of that. And it's a really interesting read. If you feel like checking it out, I would definitely recommend it. I definitely took note of a lot of different concepts from this book that I hadn't heard of before that I just found really, really fascinating. And one of the things that I really picked up on in particular was the 80/20 rule. And I can't quite actually recall this perfectly, so I'm going to share it with you to the best of my abilities from my dome. In sum, this rule has a loose variation of meanings, but within this context of dating, if you will, it was used to describe that in actuality, it's incredibly unhealthy to have an expectation on a relationship, on a person, on people, on yourself, to expect things to always be great. And hearing that, obviously, it makes sense. You're kind of like, yeah, you can't expect things to be great all the time. But I mean, as humans, we tend to do that anyways. And sometimes when we just really care about something, that's kind of the nature that just comes out because we want things to go well, we want things to be good. So basically, what she says is instead of focusing on this so heavily, where you can control things, think about altering this idea of things being great to being good, to being okay, to being even average, and realize that that is healthy. Like, 80% of the time. And also know that if there are disagreements or maybe not the most exciting moments in general or, from time to time, about 20% of the time, that's very normal. If things were perfect and awesome 100% of the time, I mean, yeah, that'd be ideal. But also, that's really not realistic. It's not fair. It's not representative of, I think, what a healthy relationship is meant to be. I mean, I always think about this. If someone gets along with you in every single aspect of your interests, of, your mannerisms, of the way you love to live your life, the goals that you have. I mean, that's amazing, but also you're not really learning much outside of your scope. And I think it's important to do that. And in this capacity, that's very much something that is important to do. And it's important to learn about people and learn about different walks of life and learn about different goals and different aspirations and all of that. Because without that, I feel like, for me at least, that life is quite boring. And I really think that's a good thing to consider a lot of the time. And this rule obviously can and also can't apply to a lot of things in a relationship, but as a whole, I just found it to be rather interesting since it removes a little bit of that pressure to be happy and perfect and excited all of the time. Because realistically, I think in any sort of relationship type of capacity, it's really easy to place pressure on yourself, really easy to, put expectations on yourself or another person or again, more people. And I think this helps to just remove some of that pressure and just to know that things are meant to be a little bit all over the place sometimes, ebb and flow. It's very much just like that. Now, in terms of sharing personal experiences, I don't really have any that I wish to share right off the bat in full honesty. But with that, I will say, kind of like I mentioned, that sometimes I think within any kind of relationship, any capacity, whether it's a romantic partner, platonic, that's a friend, a colleague, even, when a relationship is new or just blooming, if you will, whatever you want to call it, I think it's natural for us to place pressure on it to a degree. Why? I don't know, but I just know that we do it. As humans, it's just the thing that we do. We can't help it. It's because it comes from a place of care. It comes from a place of wanting to place our best foot forward, from not wanting to seem stupid, not wanting to trip up, not to make mistakes, and do pretty much what we do online a lot of the time, which is show up as like a highlight reel in whatever way we can. And I think that implementing that rule is kind of soothing for this thought and kind of soothing for this process. And it's a good thing to remember and it's a good thing to recall. And I feel like it can be applied again in so many different capacities. It doesn't just have to be a romantic relationship, doesn't just have to be, you know, that sort of a partnership. It can be a partnership in any capacity. Things are always going to be a little bit up and down. Things are going to be a little bit of a roller coaster. It just is how it goes. That's something I just wanted to share. And I found, again, I'm tying sort of the different segments that I do normally together very tightly in this sense. But I do think there's a sort of fascination, for me at least, with this idea of always wanting things to be perfect. I, to some degree, am also a perfectionist myself. I'm very much guilty of this. I'm not saying I don't do any of this stuff, but I do find this fact to be really interesting. And I think it's interesting to tie it into the whole concept of this month and, the holiday specifically of Valentine's Day, because I think the way we go about celebrating it and the way we place pressure on it and the way that we, you know, maybe shift things around in our life, whether that's planning or whether that's going to get a gift or really elaborate dates, what have you, whatever it may be. I find it interesting because it is something that we as a society do and we participate in and we sort of just abide to. Not everybody, but some of us, myself included. I think it's really fascinating. And I think that sometimes we feel a sense of pressure. We feel a sense of, I got to do better. I got to step it up. I need to do more because maybe we feel inadequate to a degree. Maybe it's possible that we think doing things a certain way will help to actually enrich and better a relationship. Now, I can't speak for everybody, but surely there's some relationships out there that maybe feel this way, or maybe feel as though if I do this a little bit better, it'll fix a lot of stuff, or if I do this a little bit better, it'll fix everything. And I think that this holiday is definitely one that gets tied into that sometimes. And it gets tied into this idea of almost repairing and maybe mending in a sense, which is interesting. I think this sort of a phase of a relationship can happen at any point in any kind of relationship at any time. But I do find it really fascinating to look at it specifically from the angle of Valentine's Day and why that might be and what that might be able to prepare or repair or fix or, even ahead of something. Maybe it's preempting to fix something. I don't know. It's interesting when you sit about it and think about it that way because I don't know. It's just there's so many different perspectives and it's kind of interesting to put yourself in different shoes to a degree and understand why this holiday might hold certain weight. Or, I think tying in the aspect even of social media really is huge because you're going to see a lot of people posting things about this throughout the day, throughout the week, maybe even throughout the month. I don't know. People celebrate to different degrees, varying degrees as a whole. And I think it's fascinating because sometimes I imagine with anything else on social media, there's this idea of feeling content with yourself and feeling content with your situation, whatever it may be. And it's kind of fascinating in a sense because you could go online and sometimes that really annoying germ in a sense of comparison creeps in and it kind of diminishes that and it takes away from that and it makes you feel as though you need to do better or you need to question what you're currently with or where you're currently dealt. Whatever your situation is, you start to consider that a little bit more, maybe. And it's kind of frustrating. I imagine with something like Valentine's Day, this happens often too. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, well, I felt like doing this for this person. And then maybe you go on and you see what somebody else did for someone else. And you're kind of just like, oh, I could have done better. Or vice versa. Maybe somebody planned out this elaborate thing for you and they're like, oh, I could have done better. It's kind of interesting. There's so many perspectives when it comes to this holiday. And I think when you're tying social media into it, it opens up even more perspectives. Like there's just so much to consider really all the time. And again, a lot of the stuff that we're considering isn't even stuff we got to consider when it comes to social media. I think that's where it sort of crosses this line and it turns to maybe not the greatest or healthiest territory, if you will. So that was something I wanted to share about Valentine's Day and that fact, and just applying that 80/20 rule to relationships of all kinds, really. Again, I do think it's natural for relationships to kind of reach different points and have ebbs and flows and kind of, sometimes relationships aren't meant to last forever. And I think that that applies to all kinds. Again, doesn't just have to be romantic, it can be any kind of relationship. That's just the way life goes. I once read this quote, and this is going to sound very cliche, where someone said that sometimes certain people are meant to come into your life for a certain season or for only a year or a month, what have you. It's just basically meant to say that people sometimes come around and are there for a certain point in time because that's all they're meant to be there for. And that's okay. That is totally fine. So there's that. The last sort of portion of every episode that I want to do for this year is either this segment of audience participation or something that I've maybe researched online. For this episode, I actually have a bit of both. And I'm excited because we'll go through this all together. But I think every single thing that I'm about to go over right now is going to be a little differing and provides a little bit of different perspective. And that's what I'm excited to share with you. So, the first thing I want to bring up is something that I saw on Reddit, basically talking about expectations for a romantic relationship. And this is kind of what I want to set the tone with because the audience submissions that I'll be sharing are also a little bit connected to that sort of line of expectations of their own expectations as a whole, that sort of theme. So I'll start with this. So the Reddit thread that I'm currently reading is basically someone just asking about what are reasonable expectations for a romantic relationship. And underneath the poster wrote, I've been told that my expectations are too high. I tend to idealize relationships that inevitably lead to letdowns. I've ended a few otherwise loving relationships over issues such as too controlling and overbearing, dead bedroom and stonewalling, lying and disrespect. On the other hand, I look around at other couples who I know have been together for years, and many of them have issues that would cause me to end a relationship, such as lack of respect, mismatched values, emotional cheating, high drama, poor communication. Geez. So maybe there is a lot of bullshit in relationships that I should be more willing to put up with if I ever want something to last. What are your thoughts on all of this? So I highlighted a couple of responses to this, and the one I want to get into first is somebody responding with basically what they think is what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. For what's reasonable, they have 3 points. The first being to want your partner to want the same things out of the relationship as you. Example, how much time you want to spend together, how serious the relationship is, a general idea of the future. Two, to expect to be treated with respect, trust, and honesty. Valid. Three, to expect decent communication. Okay, all fair. For what's not reasonable, there's 2 points. So, one, to expect to be included in every single part of your partner's life. Valid. Two, to expect perfect behavior. People are never going to act exactly the way you want them to. Your partner is going to do things that bother you or that you don't like. And these things shouldn't be major things, more like minor annoyances. Like sometimes gets a little loud while drinking, or never ever filling up the dishwasher, or playing video games a bit too much. I found that one really interesting because I didn't think it was far fetched by any means or unrealistic or pushy. I just thought that was a very natural response and actually quite healthy as an expectation. Now, another person responded and they said, wow, I will also add this response is not different from the first one, but in a sense, maybe more validating to the original poster. So I found this one really interesting too. So this person wrote back and said, wow. So to me, you sound like a totally reasonable person who knows their worth and isn't willing to settle for being treated like trash. Good for you for knowing what your boundaries are and enforcing them. Things like poor communication, any kind of cheating, disrespect, a partner being too controlling or overbearing, a common abuse red flag, etc., are all very normal reasons to leave a relationship. If you're being treated badly and have tried to communicate about the other person's behavior and they don't change, it's not your responsibility to make them a better person. Some people are going to be inconsiderate jerks, and it's not picky of you to refuse to do the emotional labor of being in a relationship with them, which I thought was a really good point. It's not like you have superficial high standards, like he must be 6'2", drive a BMW, make 150K a year, have a dog, love the same sports team I do, etc. What you're asking for is basic stuff. Be treated like a human being, for the other person to be mature and put in the same amount of effort you do to contribute positively to the relationship. You don't have to choose between a relationship and respect. You can have both. It just takes the right person. Don't settle until you find them. I thought that was wonderful because I think to start, in the original post, you can tell that the original poster feels a lot of anxiety about this and clearly is maybe even a little bit insecure about it naturally because I think in that sort of a setting that they were in where they're describing all these people around them in all these perfect relationships, obviously it's going to lead them down a little bit of a path where it's kind of like, why can't I sort that out? Or what's wrong with me? Or maybe I'm doing too much. And I think both of those responses that I shared just now do a really good example of showing the sort of validation that is necessary there because this person's not asking for a lot. I think maybe they're just a little burnt out at a point, which seems totally reasonable to be honest. And I think that both of those responses were healthy and hopefully reaffirming for that poster. I think, in a sense, again, they connect a little bit back to that fact I brought up of never expecting things to be amazing all the time or looking for very superficial things, but more so looking for the things that matter and that they deserve as a human. So, yeah, I really appreciated those two responses. I thought they were great. And I was happy to see that on my submission form. Again, if you want to participate, please feel free to visit the Trying Times Instagram, and the link in bio will have a link to take you to this form where you can basically look through a bunch of prompts and you can share your thoughts, and then they'll be shared in a future episode. I was very excited to see that a couple of my good friends wanted to share their thoughts on a prompt that I have specifically for this episode. So I'll start by saying that the prompt I put out for this episode about love and expectations is: what comes to mind when you think of the word love? How do you think society's expectations shape our understanding of it? And again, like I said, I got two responses. So, one of the ones I'll do first from a good friend of mine is this: self love. The only way to give love to others is if you have love for yourself, which already, that's amazing. And I agree. Our understanding of love starts from our parents, but we can change and mold our relationship to love to better suit our needs. In the book All About Love, Bell Hooks, which I need to check that out, love can be described as various ingredients: care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust, as well as honest and open communication. Sometimes our past, the media, our peers will make us believe otherwise, that love is something one must fight for and it should be a battle to receive love. But I believe it's more straightforward, and to be loving is inherent in most. Even if love was not shown to someone, they understand the lack and desire to be loved unconditionally. I think society has us thinking love is found in grand gesture, but it's in the everyday, the moments where love is tested, and it's easier to move to anger or misunderstanding. Love is an act of resistance. Love is probably the last thing that will truly save us. Wow. I'm kind of at a little bit of a loss for words. And as you can tell, I normally don't shut up. I think this was such a wonderfully put response, and also thought on this idea of love and expectations and what it should be in a sense too. I think I really, really resonate with the idea of self love. You know, if you don't have much to give yourself, you surely can't give others a lot. Maybe you can, but I don't think it'll be coming from the best place. Or maybe, you know, what somebody else deserves at that point in time. So there's that. I really, really love the idea of like various ingredients that they mentioned from Bella Hook's book, All About Love, which I need to check that out because that sounds amazing. And I really, really love this idea of not maybe looking at grand gestures as the only signifier of love. Because again, I think society does make us believe that that's really the only thing that we should be looking to, and that is the only thing that we should be doing. I think it's so far beyond that, but to a degree, it's interesting how we're limited to kind of reel it in and think of that as the only form of showing care or love or genuine, you know, feelings or emotions or thoughts, what have you. And I think there's so much more out there. It is really interesting. And I love that response so much. So thank you. The other response I really wanted to get into was also, again, to the same prompt about love and society's expectations. Let me just start by saying this is also a really, really great one. I have read it before, but I'm going to share it with you here. So here we go. Love. Being able to continue to say yes through it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. I truly feel it is an embodiment of your vows. It is more than the gifts and date nights that are constantly projected on social media. It is the constant action of not only putting yourself, but the person you chose to be with on top of mind for anything you do. And that is always a hard act to balance at first. But in the end, it should make sense, because to love one another, you must love yourself first. Again, these two friends, they know what they're talking about. Love has now taken on a cart surface level what is shown, meaning which can cause people to compare and base their next relationship on wanting the things they see glorified, when you do not know what is truly happening behind the scenes, which is very true. Again, social media, highlight reel, that sort of vibe. Love is putting in the actions to show that you want this every day and being committed to that, and then showing appreciation for it and for them. Society has also created this idea where people look at love and relationships as transactional and quantitative, rather than the relational, deep, engaging moments that can happen through the quality of love you have for the person. Society and social media show a lot of conditional forms of love rather than unconditional forms of it, which is what I'm referring to in the beginning. That's so good. I also promise you that these two responses are not from the same people. I want to say thank you so much to my friends Brittany and Yasmin for sending in these responses. They're so wonderfully put. I couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, I've been talking for like what, half an hour, and I'm finding the words. I'm finding the words. I'm tying the threads and tying up those loose ends. It's fine. That was so beautifully put though. And I just think it ties so much into what I was just saying earlier about the idea of, not focusing so heavily on that idea of what's projected to us, of posts, stories, gifts, date nights, all those sort of elaborate things. Yes, those are wonderful. Yes, you're allowed to enjoy those. Yes, you're allowed to celebrate those. But also, that's not all that everything is. So, there's that. I think it's really wonderful that she also mentioned this idea of society creating this sort of perspective of love and relationships as transactional and quantitative rather than relational, deep, engaging moments that happen through a quality of love that you have for a person. That's a very, very strong statement. And I think to finish it off, I mean, she said society and social media show a lot of conditional forms of love rather than unconditional. I actually, I can't say anything to that because I think that that's put so perfectly. And wow, that's that. I'm trying to think of the words here and I don't have any. I do think that to tie the two together, that Reddit post was a really great idea of somebody who, is putting themselves out there and is trying their best and is seeing a lot and maybe feeling as though they're not enough or, they're not receiving enough. And at the same time, just trying to figure it out and seemingly has a good idea of what they want. And it's just so hard to find. And these responses do kind of connect it to this idea of maybe feeling as though nothing's ever really enough because of society and social media. And it's so easy to have those thoughts and to see that in a certain light after a point in time because, yeah, things just add up. Things become a lot. Everything, in a sense, is almost a little bit like a highlight reel. It's quite annoying, really. This is coming from someone who is on social media all the time, and I do enjoy it to a degree, but also, yeah, it can be a little bit exhausting and it can be a little bit surface level and it can be a little bit almost mindless at times, and it's frustrating. But I do think that talking about this is important because it's showing a level of awareness and it's showing, these things that maybe will help somebody or maybe somebody else is thinking about. And hopefully this helps to kind of elaborate your thoughts on it and give you different perspectives because that's what this is all about. And I can't thank those friends enough for sharing their perspectives because that was wonderful. It was so, so well put. I'm so proud to have very, very wise friends around me. They're such wonderful people. I truly don't know how to tie this up because I feel like they said things better than I ever could. So, thank you guys so much. I love you for taking the time out to share that. And for you listening and watching, thank you so much for being here. I genuinely love that you are sharing your time and energy with me. It means the world to me. I wouldn't have anybody else here. So thank you so much. I hope that, again, whenever you're listening to this, you're having a wonderful day, a wonderful night. If you want to share your thoughts on certain prompts and certain episodes to be shared in the near future, please feel free to check out Instagram at the Trying Times Podcast. And in that link in bio, there's a link to go do this and share. So go do that if you want to. I hope to hear from you soon. It'd be really cool to hear your thoughts on all of these prompts as well. I would love to share that. So, yeah, that's everything for me. Pretty speechless. This has never happened in the history of ever recording. So, if you want to make me speechless, share your thoughts. But yeah, thank you so much. In all seriousness, I appreciate it. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you're having a wonderful month. Hopefully, you're showing yourself a lot of love. And yeah, that's all. Okay, bye.